Thank you. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be talking what you said. This presentation is, when I was going to give the first presentation, Otti said to me, can you, at the end of your presentation, explain whether we're still going to need hemophilia centers in the future? And I said to Otti, well, I could do a couple of slides, but it may be better if I explain why I think we will need hemophilia centers in the future. So this is the question that Otti asked me. So will we need hemophilia centers in the future? So what's my answer? Well, my answer is yes, we will, but they will change. They will not be the same way as you're seeing them today. And like I explained to you in my first presentation, if you have hemophilia these days, I think everything around you centers around bleeds, in relation to hemophilia. But I personally believe that we are in the era where if you have hemophilia, you can live a life without bleeds. You could go as far as Brian went and have gene therapy with no bleeds, but the current therapies should be good enough to lead you to a life without bleeds. So this is a very typical patient, not just in Barcelona, everywhere in the world. So why do I need to come to the hemophilia center? I have severe hemophilia, okay? It's a typical person. And people ask me this as well, as not just in your centers. So my treatment is gene therapy, Hemlibra, factor 8 or factor 9. And it may not be entirely this way in Barcelona, but in the UK, what we do, we deliver the factor 8 of all the treatments to the patient's home. So they don't have any interaction with to come to the hemophilia center to get the treatment. And I'm not having any bleeds. So I have no bleeds. I'm getting all my treatment at home. What does the center have to offer me? Why should I bother to go to the center? Well, I'll give you an answer in two ways. The first one, I don't think it will happen in Barcelona. I don't think this will happen because, as you heard from the minister, you have their backing, and I cannot imagine a healthcare system like in Spain or in Europe will allow this to happen. But this is what's happened in the US and is happening in the US. So in the US, it's based on insurance. So if you have a hemophilia, you have insurance, you go to the hospital gets money. So what happened in the US, the hemophilia centers need the patients, need the patients to be registered and to attend to get money. So if you have no patients attending the hemophilia center in the US, the hospitals will say, it's not economical for us to have a hemophilia center, and they close them. And this happens in the US. So this is the US example. Patients in the US can choose where they get followed up. They can choose whether they go to the center or not. And in the US, the insurance companies, if the patient tells them, I don't want to go to my follow-up appointment, they say, brilliant, we don't have to pay the hospital, we'll make more money. So the number of patients attending the hospitals as hemophilia care started getting better went down and down. So the hospitals then question whether it's viable to have a hemophilia center. And to have a hemophilia center is not going and seeing a doctor. You have to have doctors with expertise to cover every day of the week. They have to be there. And you need nurses, and you need physios, you need pharmacists, you need psychologists. So it's the whole infrastructure. So the US healthcare system, as you know, is broken. And it's broken for hemophilia probably even more than it is for the general. So I don't think this will be allowed to happen in Europe. So the reason for that is that in Europe we don't have really many, if any, pure insurance-based systems. We have universal healthcare, and that's the best thing, any civilized country can have, as a universal healthcare system. However, hemophilia centers have to realize the world is changing, treatments are changing, and they have to change. And if they don't change, the world around them will change, and they will become redundant. One example is, at least in our country, I know it hasn't not quite the same way in Spain, most centers in Europe probably, certainly in the UK, they're now hemophilia and thrombosis center. As a doctor, I have expertise in treating bleeding due to excessive bleeding in hemophilia, but also I have expertise in the opposite of thrombosis. So you can imagine our patient population is much bigger, and we can offer a better service if we can cover both. And as you saw in my original lecture, thrombosis is a major and expanding issue. So you're going to get, and we can get the interactions between the two. So this is what our workload is in my center. So it's completely different from 1992. If you ask me what was our workload in 1992, it was mostly severe hemophilia. We had to admit people, all the time with HIV, with hepatitis, with bleeds, but all that has changed. And it's unimaginable to a doctor or a patient working in 1992 to know where we are today. So 2/3 of our workload today is thrombosis. And about 10% is severe hemophilia. It's difficult for you if you have severe hemophilia to believe that, but the hemophilia centers, most of our workload is managing patients with mild bleeding disorders because there are many more of them. And if they come to hospital to have surgery, we have to look after them. And they're not used to treatment like yourselves. So you heard I come from Sheffield, and probably you don't know where Sheffield is, but I'll show you. People if you ask anybody in London, which is there, to tell you where is Sheffield, they will tell you that Sheffield's it's in the north, it's up there. But actually, Sheffield's in the middle. So I suspect it's not very different from many other countries. If you live in a capital city, your concept of where the rest of the country is and where the rest of the world is very different. And the way they think what they do is best is not always the same. Anyway, that's a separate issue. So what do we do? What does our center do for why do persons with severe hemophilia come to our center? Well, they come for our outpatient clinic reviews. And I was telling you earlier, and I didn't change the slide, what we do, if you have severe hemophilia and you're going to come for our review in our center, you may think that you're going to go there and see someone and then you walk out of the room. It's not. The 1 week before you come, we always have a multidisciplinary team meeting, and that has about 15 to 20 people. We have all of the doctors, all the nurses, psychologists, social worker, the laboratory people, and we know who's going to come for review. And we discuss every patient individually, so we know if there is any issues coming up to ask them. Then it's your review, and during that review we have a nurse, a doctor, and a physiotherapist in that consultation. The week after we've seen them, we discuss amongst the team again, who have we seen, what are the jobs left to follow up with each of them. And, so don't be misled that you come for 10 minutes or 15 minutes in the room and that's it. We spend a lot of time discussing your care. So we do surgery, and obviously that is increasing because the population is getting older, we can do more things. We do some dental procedures, people who cannot have them elsewhere in the community. We provide, if the patient has had a bleed after injury, that they cannot manage at home. But this is very unusual these days, especially with severe hemophilia. So we almost never admit patients with spontaneous bleeds with severe hemophilia because the severe hemophilia patients treat themselves at home. And that's been the biggest difference. Their own prophylaxis, they're not getting the bleeds. So if you're a center that thought this is going to be the future, it's not. So why do severe hemophiliacs who do not bleed, like I asked originally, need to attend a hemophilia center? First of all, none of the current treatments cure hemophilia. Even gene therapy, I told you, it does not cure hemophilia. Hemophilia can still be transmitted. And you need the team. If you have a daughter who is a carrier and is going to carry hemophilia, you need the hemophilia center to discuss things with you. The clotting is not normal. It may appear to be normal. I told you earlier about the patient in Spain who ran into major problems because went to a hospital that didn't know anything about hemophilia, does a blood test, your clotting is normal, we'll operate. And that's what almost led to disaster. And it's not just Spain. Ask anybody else in Europe, the same things are happening. You need to be aware, if you're on certain therapies, what your clotting test will show. Coagulation tests can be misleading, and appropriate tests may not be available in all hospitals. Even in Spain, in the UK, there is one test that is available, for example, to measure factor VIII. It's fairly cheap, and it's probably available in, 30% of the UK hospitals and in all the hemophilia centers. But amazingly, the more accurate test is not available in every hemophilia center. So you may get a number, but it may not be the true number about your factor. You need to be monitored for inhibitor development. I didn't speak about this earlier. If you have had an inhibitor when you were a child and you start on Hemlibra and you have no bleeds at all, so you go on year with no bleed at all, that inhibitor from when you were a child can come back without you knowing it because Hemlibra works in both. So it's really important to know if your inhibitor has come back, because if you get a bleed, the treatment is not going to be factor VIII, it's going to be Nova 7. Okay, so that's an issue that is stated. And if you do get problems, you need an expert to manage you if you get a clot. In the population in general, a third of the population are going to get heart attacks or strokes. Okay? Persons with hemophilia are going to get less because hemophilia is protective against those, but it doesn't protect you completely. You're still, if you have hemophilia, it is possible you may have a heart attack when you're it's not going to be when you're young, but over the age of 70. So what happens when you have a heart attack at the age of 70 and you go to your local hospital, if they don't have a hemophilia center? It's really, really important at that time, more than the whole of your life, to have an expert that knows what they're doing. So what do you expect from your center? And I think probably these are offered from the centers in Barcelona. Your center should be able to see you day and night, every day of the week, if you have an emergency. You should expect the person who is seeing you either to have some expertise in hemophilia or to be able to talk to someone at home who has expertise in hemophilia. You would expect them to have the concentrates in stock if you have a problem. You should expect to have a laboratory that is good enough to do all the tests. And it's not always possible, and it's not possible for you probably as a patient to know whether your center has this. And you should be able to get support for surgery 24/7. So hemophilia centers in the future. I believe we are going to have less hemophilia centers. I know this may not be very popular, me talking about this in Barcelona, but I think there will be less. But the facilities will be greater. In Norway, there is one hemophilia center. Look at the map of Norway. How far the north of Norway is from the south. It's probably in distance much longer than the bottom to top of Spain. You would expect all treatments to be delivered to the patient's home. You would expect digital appointments if the patients want them, if they don't want to come to the center. Blood samples can be taken locally and sent to the center. COVID allowed innovation. In our city, in Sheffield, when COVID came, the hospital said they didn't want patients to come to the hospital. So we organized a phlebotomy service in the community. So they put a tented city in a car park. So if we speak to a patient on the phone and need bloods, we tell them we need these bloods. We request them on the hospital computer. The patient drives to this place near the highway. No appointments. They're open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. They go there. They tell as they drive through what their name is. They put their arm out of the window. Someone takes the blood, back in, and they drive away. You're not allowed to walk into this center, and you're not allowed to leave your car. And there is no appointments. And it's highly efficient. When they asked us, which part of COVID did we as medical professionals wanted to continue, that service is amazingly good. And I'm sure it's continuing. The nurses, doctors won't like this. I believe in the future, hemophilia care will be delivered by nurses, but the nurses will be more probably professionally trained. Our nurses have higher degrees, they have higher training, they're able to examine patients, they're able to prescribe all medications, not just factor. So in our center, I have much more faith in our nurse seeing the patient than I do for any of our junior doctors seeing them, because the junior doctors don't have the experience. So all the centers will be externally audited. We all think we do well, but how do we know? And this is coming. It's probably coming in Spain as well, but certainly it's available in Europe. It's going to come in Europe. It's available in the UK, but it's available for about 20 or 30 years, but it's going to be available in Europe as well. You're going to get people coming into your center to examine every aspect of your center. When that happens, people are scared that someone is going to come and examine our service. But after a while, we welcome it like anything. Because if someone externally comes to you, to your center, and says, you do not have a psychologist and your physiotherapy service is poor, there is nothing better for us as health professionals for an external person to tell us. Because we go to our hospital authorities and say, look, externally audited, and this is what they said. So, will we need hemophilia centers in the future? Yes, we will, but they will have to change. Thank you.